Howdy y'all, this is Dwight and welcome back to part 12 and hopefully the final episode of how I make a basic slip joint pocket knife. Now before I started filming, I did go over my flat surface and clean my liners up, and I also went through and cleaned my file work up, make sure there wasn't no glue residue, and to sharpen all the points up on it. And I also took this little cheap burr and by hand I created a divot in the end and middle pinhole. Now I did that more in the upper part. See if we can get a pin up in there. That way we can see the gap that's around the pin. I peen these two pins quite firmly, which creates a pretty strong head on the pin, and I found that holds the middle and end pin quite nicely. Now for the pivot pin, I use this hand reamer, and I do not remember what angle this is, but it was just a cheap hand reamer off of Amazon, and I reamed my pivot pin hole out approximately halfway down, give or take a little bit. A little more is fine, because for the pivot pin I want the pin to expand a little farther down in the hole. That way it just has stronger holding capabilities, since this is where a majority of the stresses are going to be on that pivot pin. So I'm going to go through, make sure all my parts are good and clean, and I'll be back when I'm ready to start painting this together. Here we are with the knife assembled. Before we get started, I forgot to mention that I also took a piece of 400 grit paper and knocked the corners off of the edge of the liners on just the inside here. That way you can rub your finger down through here and you don't feel a sharp edge. It feels nice and smooth. I did want to mention that. Give you a look, approximate height of the pins. I just kind of do some guesswork with it, go by eye, and I'm going to go ahead and peen the end and the middle pin. I have a sledgehammer head and a stump here. This is my anvil, and I'm using my granddaddy's ball peen hammer. Technically this is a bigger ball peen than what is recommended, but it just so happened to be what I have. So I'm just going to peen back and forth, and I'm going to give the end and the middle, I'm going to peen them rather firmly. Okay, I'm going to take it and I'm going to look around it, see if I'm gapping anywhere. In an earlier video I did mention if you do over peen in G10 you will see white stress marks around the pin. So now granted, it should still hold, it just does not look near as nice. Kind of lightly go around the edges, that way the edges are getting peened over to help make sure I'm not leaving any gaps. This in just a little bit. Okay, I believe we're good on the end pin. Okay, we'll move to the center pin. Basically the same thing. Getting the pin flared out nicely. Of course, now peening hard like that expands the pin all the way down through as well. So these two pins are getting really locked in there. I wouldn't dare peen that pivot pin in the same way. And you hear the different sounds. I'm not hitting the pin whenever you actually see a little, well I can anyways, yeah, a little smudge. On G10, that's why I don't finish it all the way out until after the knife is assembled and pinned together. And quite honestly, I'm not worried about hitting G10. I still need expanded some. Now, if I had wood or bone, yeah, I'm a lot more careful. Okay, yeah, that one's expanded out good. This side needs a little more. The lower end of this one, where the handle is contoured down, these ones are a little bit more challenging. There we go. I believe we got that. Now, time for the pivot pin. As you can see, we got all kinds of slop. But the back of the knife is looking good at this point. Now, some people like peening the pivot pin first, and that's fine. I kind of do it either way, just kind of whichever takes my hankering. You can also use a little bit of a shim. Quite honestly, that can make it easier to not bind your blade in there so quickly. But once you take the shim out, then you have a little bit of play again, and you have to make sure to fill that hole up. So all I'm going to do on this pivot pin is I'm going to peen around the outside edge. And I'm going to use angled hits, I guess you might say. I'm going to start off gently. Do this on both sides, back and forth. And it's very easy to mishit and move your pin side to side and not all of a sudden not have a pin sticking out on one side. That is one of the main reasons why I say do this part carefully. Yeah, see how that pin is sticking out a little bit farther on this side than this side. So there we go, very light tap, and it's even again. When it comes to peening the pivot pin especially, taking your time and using patience is very much needed. At least it is for me. Okay, yeah, I'm looking around there to see if I'm filling in the gap around the pin. And you can also see I still have slop, so I'm still good. I missed it. Move the pin a little. Okay, my slop isn't near as much now. You can still hear it. Still shutting nice. At this point, our blade centered lovely. Action sounds lovely as well. Now is the time got to be extremely careful. And looking around the head of the pin there, I'm getting very close to having that gap filled up. Now, I do have extra pins sticking out. So at this time, I'm going to take, see if it loosens up. Okay, it still loosens up, so I will wait. At this point, I can take some of my extra pin material off, but for now, I will go ahead and pin a little more. And I'm looking to see if I can find a shadowy gap to know where I need to peen. Still free. Give it some firm pulls. That way that helps seat that pin in that hole I made, or countersink hole, however you want to say that. There we go. Still have a little bit. Okay, at this point, this clip is running really long. So for my phone memory, I'm going to go ahead and smooth my pins out. And I'm really close to finish peening the pivot pin at this point. I'm going to take the extra material off and gently peen some more, and when I'm done with that, I will be back. Okay, here's where we're at. Lovely sounding action. Don't have no play. And what I did, that last video clip was getting quite long, so I'll probably end up speeding that up so I can get the video to low. I took my pivot pin off to where it's just proud, and then I gently peened, as well as yank around on it to loosen it back up, gently peened, go around on it to loosen it back up, gently peen. And I did that several times until I'm at this point here, and we're not bound up. And I haven't even put any oil in it yet, which actually I should do, but that kept all my pivot area clean and free of oil. I just use WD-40. I keep it simple. So now all my pins are of course still proud. So I'm going to smooth all those down, and we'll start getting ready to finish this handle. Okay, I flattened my handle pins out on the flat platen of my belt grinder, and this is just 220 grit. I was careful, and I got my pivot pins, the initial flattened down. I was very careful. There's still just a tiny bit left, but I'm going to do that by hand with a hard back when I hand sand. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spine along my rubber contact wheel and dress my spine up now. Okay, I just got done smoothing my spine out, and I started off with a 220 grit belt, then I went over it with a 400 grit belt, and I will now proceed to hand sand that to get a nicer finish on it. As well as this is G10, so I'm going to water sand this G10, and I'm going to be using my G10 block. That way I don't create any high and low spots around my pins. And I will be starting off with a 400 grit wet dry paper. So I will be back whenever I have all this water sanded. I now have the handles hand sanded up to 1000 grit. I have taped the blade off, as well as one side of the handle scales, and I've covered the spine and the inside, because I'm fixing to buff the handles. I'm going to be using green compound, and I don't want compound getting down inside the handle or down in my file work. So when I'm done buffing, we will be back. Okay, just got it off the buffer and untaped, so I still got a little bit of residue I need to clean up. But the handles turned out pretty nicely. Inside's nice and clean. Spine looks nice. So now all I have left to do is to put an edge on it. So I will be doing that. I have a wicked edge sharpening system that I use, but I'm going to go ahead and end the video here, because once I get the cutting edge on the knife, I consider it done. So I'm going to finish wiping this off and get it ready for sharpening, and once I have it sharpened up, then I will do a regular video showing off how this turned out. I do appreciate everyone who's been following along, and until the next video, y'all take care.